Welcome back to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Before we meet today's guest, we want to give a shout out to our podcast partners, the global community of women in high school sports, and We Coach. These are two great groups you really need to be a part of. So let's go and hear from our sponsors, and then we'll meet our guest on today's episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com and they're going to show you how to set up and sell your tickets online. They'll show you how to scan the attendees that come to your games and collect your revenue. And every step of the way, you're going to have a dedicated client success manager that's providing hands-on support. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com. They'll also show you how to set up and sell tickets for things like school dances, your school plays and concerts, even graduation. That's hometownticketing.com. Simple and easy online ticketing. We also want to say thanks to the Snap group, Snap Raise. Go to onsnap.com. That's onsnap.com and check out their platform. Snap Raise is their fundraising platform that our coaches have used at our school and raised thousands of dollars. Snap Spend is a money management platform. It's secure and transparent. Snap Store allows you to provide high quality spirit gear for everybody in your program. And Snap Manage actually creates a website for you and your school. And Snap Connect is the multilingual family engagement communication platform. It's all there at onsnap.com. That's onsnap.com. We want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to gipper.com and see how athletic directors are creating world-class marketing content for their school's social media channel. You can do it in seconds on any device, and you don't need any design experience. Go to Gipper.com, tell them you heard about it on the podcast, and use the podcast code ADPOD10. That's ADPOD10 and get 10% off. Start creating world-class marketing content for your school. Go to Gipper.com. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. Go to Huddle.com. Huddle is how the world sees sports, and you can join over 200,000 teams and organizations that use Huddle to help their athletes play better. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but as an athletic director, our school was a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved the smart cameras, the mobile apps. Of course, they love the analytics, but there's so much more. Huddle's built for every level of play, from club and youth teams all the way through high school and college programs. And if you go to huddle.com, you'll find a complete solution with a professional-grade analysis for your athletic department. At Huddle, we believe in sports, and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 6 million users and turn your school into a Huddle school. We want to thank Final Forms for their support. Final Forms is the industry leader in forms and registration, but there's so much more. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with things like mobile accessibility, and they've got reminders for parents about policies, about physicals, and all the forms that come when you have an athlete in the house. Final Forms can help your coaches with things like attendance and communication, and for athletic directors, Final Forms can help you with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. You know, it's time that you talk to a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake to get started with Final Forms. We also want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack. They sponsor the Athletic Director Toolbox of our regular interviews. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. At my schools, we use surveys for just about everything, for teachers, for coaches, for kids, and for parents. And the information that came back was almost always over the top positive. But surveys also allow that squeaky wheel parent to vent a little. And sometimes they'll share a small issue that you can end up addressing and keep it from turning into a big issue because you didn't know about it, because you didn't do a survey. Go to athleticsurveys.com or email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the pros at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. We also want to say thanks to Vital Signs by Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school's record boards for all your sports or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. They've got a collection of interactive touchscreen consoles and an entire library of templates to help recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com and let them help you showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments. You can also email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. And we want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive. Their indoor scoring tables and video boards not only generate income for your department, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo, see their tables and boards in action. We've got a Sideline Interactive indoor scoring table in our gym, and it's just fantastic. We use it for games, of course, but we also use it for pep rallies, for signing ceremonies. It's tremendously versatile, and their customer service is just outstanding. Email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com, and you can see exactly what their fantastic products can do for you. That's sidelineinteractive.com. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going kind of tech today, and we're headed back to Ohio, which is one of our most popular states. And our guest is Danny Chaloub. He is the Director of School Partnerships for a company called DistrictWon, and that's WON, DistrictWon. And he's going to tell us a little bit about himself, a little bit about the platform. But before we get going, Danny Chaloub, welcome to the Educational AD Podcast.
Jake, thank you so much for having me. I've been watching the podcast here for quite some time, and you do a phenomenal job with all the guests and all the ADs that you have on. They bring such great insight on all different types of topics that you guys that you ask about and that you bring about. So it's really cool to be on. So thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And again, we typically identify people like you as a friend of the show. We know that you watch and listen, and you make comments and you like, and that's a great way to get on the show if you're listening. Become a friend of the show. So, Danny, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So, sure. Give us that quick bio, where you were born, where you grew up, and maybe your path that brought you to DistrictWon.
Absolutely. So I was born and bred here in Cleveland, Ohio, just on the east side of Cleveland in the suburbs. Grew up in Catholic schools my whole life, Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, Catholic college. Went to an all-boys school, and it's not the all-boys school everybody thinks about when you think of Cleveland, Ohio, which is St. Ignatius, or the other one, which is St. Ed's. I like to think I went to a better all-boys school, which is Benedictine, and played football there all 4 years. Went on to play college ball at John Carroll for a couple of years until I had a knee injury. And then while at John Carroll, I really got the itch that, if I can't continue to play, I'd like to do something involved with the sport of football, which is coach. So me thinking, well, what pairs up with coaching if you want to coach in schools or coach, young kids? Get my education degree. So I got my teaching degree and education degree at John Carroll University. It's a small D3 school here in Cleveland, Ohio, but never actually stepped foot in the classroom when I graduated. And that was because friends of mine that I grew up with my entire life from grade school actually started a marketing and advertising company to work with high schools across the country in a different capacity, which is providing schools with these unique sponsorship opportunities and then providing funding to execute those opportunities. So, I've been doing this and in that role for almost 20 years now. And it's just been fun because it still connects me with, all different sports. It still connects me with the high school athletics, which I love so much. And it gets me out in all different kinds. This opportunity has provided me with just different opportunities to travel all across the country to places I thought I would never be able to travel, such as places like Florida. I've been to Orlando, I've been to Miami, I've been to Tampa and Jacksonville and all the way out to Anaheim, California, and everything in between. So very fortunate to be a part of this company that we have, and very fortunate to work with guys that I grew up with my whole life.
Yeah. Again, I just love to listen to the stories and the twists and turns that go with, all of our journeys. Talk a little bit with our listeners about the mentors that you've had in your life. None of us get to where we're at on our own. So
Sure.
who are some of the people that have helped you along the way?
Sure. Well, the first person that comes to my mind is my mother. And I'm guessing a lot of people on your show say that. But growing up in a single household, my mother actually, came to this country. They're immigrants from Lebanon. They came to this country back in 1969, and she's been working her entire life. She put 3 kids through Catholic grade school, Catholic high school. I was really the only fortunate one to go to college out of my family. So just seeing my mom and the hard work that she's put in her entire life and what she does to support 3 kids on her own since I was 7, really. I would say, she's one of the biggest mentors that I have. Just her work ethic, how she approaches life, how she approaches her job and what she does. She has been a huge mentor in my life and still is. I'm 6'1", 320 pounds, and my mom is 5'4", and she'll always tell me no matter how big I get, she can still, which is great. It's pretty funny. So I get a kick out of that. And then I would say, one of my other mentors that really had an impact on my life, really, get into the teaching profession, was my 5th grade teacher. Her name was Mrs. Sedney. I'll never forget her. She really had an impact on my life, just wanting to go down that path of being an educator and getting into education, which unfortunately, like I said, I never really stepped foot into a classroom. But she had an impact on my life, just positively, and just, how she took me in, knowing, again, my family history and my story. She kind of viewed me as, as one of her own, as one of her kids, and which was great. So I would say my 5th grade teacher as well had a really big impact on my life. There have been many others. I've got 3 great uncles that all acted as my father, growing up. I was fortunate enough, a lot of people don't get this, but I was fortunate enough to grow up directly next door to my grandparents, saw how hard they worked, how hard that they, tried to learn the English language. And what they did for their kids, my mom included. My mom was one of 7, so how hard they worked and what they did. It just took those values, and I still carry those values right now, and how I approach my job and what I do. And I don't take one day for granted that I have that I'm fortunate enough to have a great job, provide for my family, my wife and kid. So I don't take one day for granted, just like how my grandfather or my grandmother or my mother don't take for not one day for granted that they have a job to provide for their families.
Yeah, the family is just so important, and of course, those other mentors are too. But we're getting to experience, my wife and I getting to experience that grandparent relationship right now with our little granddaughter. So
that's
very cool.
awesome. That's awesome.
For our listeners, our guest today is Danny Chaloub. He is the Director of School Partnerships for a company called DistrictWon, and that's WON. We're going to hear more about DistrictWon in a minute, but let's take our first break. We'll be back with some more. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to give a shout out to our good friends at Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com, and they're going to show you how to set up and sell your tickets online. They'll show you how to scan the attendees that come to your games and collect your revenue. And every step of the way, you're going to have a dedicated client success manager that's providing hands-on support. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com. They'll also show you how to set up and sell tickets for things like school dances, your school plays and concerts, even graduation. That's hometownticketing.com. Simple and easy online ticketing. We also want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive indoor scoring tables and video boards. You've heard me say that we've got a Sideline Interactive indoor scoring table in our gym, and it's just fantastic. We use it for games, of course, but we use it for signing ceremonies. We use it for pep rallies. It's tremendously versatile, and the Sideline Interactive customer service is just outstanding. Go to sidelineinteractive.com or email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com and see exactly what their fantastic products can do for you. That's sidelineinteractive.com. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest is Danny Chaloub, and he's from DistrictWon. Danny, before we get into DistrictWon, one of the things we try to do with the podcast is this idea of sharing best practices. So I'm going to put you on the spot. In your travels around the country, you've seen a lot of different programs, a lot of ADs, a lot of coaches. You yourself, were a high school and college athlete. What are some best practices that you have seen that really stood out that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Wow, Jake, it's a really good question. I mean, there's just a lot that's out there. I mean, really, it's for what I've seen, and especially in the working with athletic directors, and just in my own life as far as being a student athlete and juggling, being a student athlete in college, organization. How well are you organized? With your daily, with your daily tasks and what you're doing. But not only that, it's also to have, I think the best practice is to have that support system to keep you organized. I think, and again, traveling across the country and you being a former AD, just my experiences, the first person that picks up the phone when you're calling to talk to an athletic director is his administrative assistant. And I think the administrative assistant, whether it's he or she, I firmly believe really, run the department. They are the ones that are organizing the practices, organizing the fields, organizing, the travel and so on and so forth. So really aligning yourself with, great organizational skills, but also aligning yourself with somebody that supports those organizational skills really is something that I picked up just traveling across the country, just for best practices, and how I do my daily life, it is, keeping a daily journal, organizing everything through a calendar, but also, sharing that calendar with coworkers to where, my coworkers keep me on task.
Absolutely.
And keep me, focused on what needs to be done on a daily basis to achieve, our goals and what we need to do. So really, I mean, I would say that's probably the best, practice that I've picked up all across my, my time and across the country. Just right when I walk into, an AD's office, yeah, it may be, messy and have things all over the place, but their daily schedule, their daily life is all organized through that calendar. And that first person, when you walk into the door and you see him or her sitting at that desk before you meet that AD, that person right there is supporting that organizational skills and making sure that they stay on task every single day. So I would say that's probably the best practice per se that I've, or skill or attribute that I've picked up just in my travels all across the country and working with athletic departments all across the country.
Right. And again, you're so right. When you walk into that office, whether it's an athletic director, a coach, or a business person, you get that vibe right away. hey, they're organized and this system is running smoothly.
Right.
And great shout out to all those administrative assistants. You're right. They frequently, and it was the case for me. I had great administrative assistants, just an
Yeah.
invaluable tool. Great stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I firmly believe like they run the department, and not taking anything away from the daily things that athletic director has to go through with, eligibility and cancellations and this and that, whatever. But that administrative assistant right there is there to support every single step and every single decision that the AD makes, and they make it happen.
Right. No, and they allow the AD to do those things
Right.
that the administrative assistant is not going to do. So
Right.
again, great
Right.
point. Hey, let's go and talk a little bit about District One.
Sure.
Let's pretend that we've got an AD who's listening, maybe it's Ohio or Florida
Yeah.
or somewhere, that has never heard of it. So give us some broad brushstrokes. What is District One? Why should an AD care about it? And then we'll take a break. And when we come back from that break, let's take a deep dive into some of the features that really stick out for you
Sure.
with District One. So tell us about District One.
So District One, it's twofold. We view ourselves as a national booster club, that we go out and target large companies with large budgets that want to be in front of the high school audience to market their brand. And then we actually provide funding to the schools to execute those opportunities. And I'll give you a prime example. One of our larger partners was T-Mobile, and we executed a partnership countrywide with T-Mobile with over 300 high schools across the country. We provide all the marketing elements and then ask schools to execute these elements and then provide funding to execute those elements. So that's one half of District One. The other half of District One that I also oversee is our uniform and apparel sales. We provide uniforms and just general apparel, whether it's coaching gear, practice wear, online spirit wear stores. We do all of that with high schools all across the country as well. But we kind of do it a little differently, only because, and when I say differently, I mean we have aligned ourselves with brands that benefit the high schools in so many different ways. And I'll just give you one example. Again, you being a former AD, one of the biggest things you always had to worry about with uniforms is replacements. Something goes missing all the time. Well, with the brands that we carry, after the initial order, because every order that you place is custom to your design and to your style, that brand or I should say that uniform never goes out of stock, because it always will have to be made because it's custom to your design. So that's in a broad strokes, District One. It's sponsorships providing to the schools, but also providing great quality uniforms and apparel that at a much discounted rate than those bigger name brands, if you will.
Okay. So again, correct me if I'm oversimplifying here. You're, kind of a conduit to, funding from companies to help athletic departments accomplish some of the things that they need. And you mentioned, uniforms is one example. Is that a good
Yeah,
description?
exactly. Like I said, we view ourselves as like I said, a national booster club. We want to add more money to the pot to what schools booster clubs are already raising. We're not, we don't devote ourselves to call the local mom and pop shops, the local pizzeria down the street. We know that schools have booster clubs that do that. We want to bring in, larger companies, like I said, like a T-Mobile or a Kia, that want to support not just one high school, but hundreds of high schools across the country, and then provide more funding on top of whatever the booster clubs are bringing in. And then on the uniform aspect, we provide quality uniforms at a much discounted cheaper rate than the bigger brands, and that's that's how we look at ourselves, and I do a lot, again, I do a lot of educating on those brands and how they can be more beneficial to schools than ordering larger brands like Nike, Under Armour, or Adidas.
Okay.
One of the
Well,
brands you probably have heard of.
oh, well, no, absolutely. We went as an AD, we went both routes. We went big name and we
Sure.
went, let's say, value, trying to get, more, for maybe a few less dollars that we could spend
Yeah,
elsewhere in our department. So no, I'm right
exactly.
with you on that.
Yeah.
Let's go and take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to take a deeper dive into some of the things that District One can do for our listeners. So,
Sure.
again, if you just tuned in, our guest today is Danny Chaloub, and he is with a company called DistrictWon. That's WON out of Ohio. Let's take another break, but we'll be back. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to Vital Signs Wall of Fame for their support. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school's record boards for all the sports, for all the teams, or to display your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com and check out their interactive touchscreen consoles and their library of templates. Their goal is to help you recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com and they'll help you showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments. You can also email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. We also want to say thanks to Snap Raise. Go to OnSnap, that's onsnap.com, and check out their platform. They've got a lot of different ways that an athletic department can benefit. Snap Raise is their fundraising platform. Our coaches have actually used it with great success. Snap Spend is a money management system set up for clubs and organizations. Snap Store allows you to order gear. Snap Connect is a great way to build your school's website. And Snap Manage is their multilingual family engagement platform. So check out all the things that Snap can do for you. Go to onsnap.com for more information. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest is Danny Chaloub. He is with District One, and he's going to take us on a little bit of a deeper dive. So, athletic directors, listen up. Danny, what can District One do for our listeners?
It's a really good question. What I really do want to talk about, I'll talk about the second half of the company that I was talking about, which is our apparel and uniform side of the company. Again, as I was telling you, Jake, we have really aligned ourselves with brands that I believe, are more beneficial to high schools than some of the bigger brands like the Nike, the Under Armours, or the Adidases. And I'll just give you a prime example. I'm sure a lot of your listeners, including yourself, remember a company called Don Allison. Don Allison's been around since the 70s. What a lot of people don't know about Don Allison was, number one, they were bought by a company called Badger. Badger's been around since the 70s as well, but now Badger's also been bought by a private equity firm, and now they're all kind of under one umbrella called the Founders Sports Group. But what Allison still does till this day, and I'm guessing a lot of your listeners have been in these uniforms, is that they make every Under Armour uniform in the market right now. I've been to the plant where I've seen the process where all they do is slap that Under Armour logo on at the end of the process, and schools get charged the Under Armour price, where they can still order Allison and get the Allison price that'll save them hundreds, if not thousands of dollars back to their budgets. So we've aligned ourselves with brands like Allison, another brand called Garb Athletics. Garb Athletics is a brand out of Utah. Not sure if a lot of schools have heard of them or not, but they outfit hundreds of colleges across the country and thousands of high schools across the country. And the reason being, that we partnered up with these brands is, like I said, I firmly believe, just been working with schools for almost 20 years now, is that these brands really are beneficial to the high school in so many ways. But I'll give you the top 3 bullet points. Number one is that the turnaround time. I know with the larger brands, a lot of schools are ordering them a year in advance to hopefully get them by the season, by when that season starts. And a lot of times that doesn't happen for a multitude of reasons. With Allison or Garb or some of the other brands that we carry, the turnaround time, and I know a lot of people won't believe me, but the turnaround time is 15 business days from when you place the order to when you guys would receive that order. The second biggest benefit is that all of the brands with all of the uniforms are all fully customizable and fully sublimated uniforms. Again, with a lot of the larger brands, what they do is that they provide you guys with more of a quote unquote stock jersey where you decorate, have it one or two colors on the front with a number on the front and number on the back. And that's really to the extent of it before, it gets more and more expensive. Well, with these brands, again, with Garb and Allison, you can customize and design and decorate the uniforms however you want, and the price won't change. So because of that, again, schools can really customize and design the uniforms how they want. And I think that's what kids really care about these days, more so than, the brand that's on the jersey. I think kids really care about what the uniforms look like. They want them to look cool. They really want to be in something that really looks cool. Because Jake, maybe you can answer this question for me, but have you ever had one of your student athletes come off the field or the court and say, hey, Jake, thank you so much for buying us these Nike uniforms because they helped me score 40 points. I've never heard it. I've never witnessed it. I don't know. Have you ever, has anybody ever come off the floor and thank you for getting them that name brand uniform because it helped them in accomplishing their athletic goal or their athletic feat in winning a game?
We've had kids, they say, oh, we want those Nike uniforms or that team, those look really cool. But what the kids want is, they want something that looks nice, but they want something that is comfortable,
right?
That
Yes.
allows them to move.
Yes.
And then the looks come in later.
Yes.
So again, we've all been there. We wanted
Sure.
that shiny new bicycle or whatever
Yep.
it was. I'll
Yep.
date myself. 100 years ago in high school, when Adidas first came out, the basketball shoe, what I'm talking about. We all wanted them.
Yeah.
But they, at that time, I'm not trying to slam the brand, but I will tell you at that time, back in the early 70s, it was the most uncomfortable sneaker I ever had. We wanted our Chuck Taylors back. But, again, Adidas is a fine product, but again, kids want something that's going to feel good. It's going to perform. Okay. Like shoes, especially, but uniforms. And okay. If it's a different brand, who cares?
Right. And then the last thing I'm gonna point out in the last major bullet point, and I think this is the most important for all athletic departments across the country. And we touched on this a little bit during the commercial. The most important thing I think to athletic directors is being able to replace that uniform, because as well as anybody, uniforms go missing, or you guys that, maybe an athletic department decides that they want to give the jersey or the uniform as a gift to their seniors, whatever, or it tears or it rips or whatever the case may be. Well, with the brands that we've aligned ourselves with, because of what I mentioned before, because they're custom to your design and custom to how you guys want them to look, these uniforms never go out of stock and never go out of style. So you'll always be able to get that uniform, whether it's directly after the season or 5 years down the road. As long as you're ordering that same uniform, the same look of the uniform, you'll always be able to get it no matter what. And I think that's probably the biggest benefit to all the athletic departments across the country. And so you'll always be able to replace that uniform after the initial order. Sometimes with these bigger brands, they go on a 2-year rotation, meaning that after that first year and that second year, let's say something does happen and you call up your rep and say, hey, you know what? We actually gave these jerseys away to our seniors or whatever the case may be. And your rep will say, well, unfortunately, that style of jersey is no longer available. So it's forcing athletic departments to do two things: either go without, or you're going to have to purchase a whole brand new set that you didn't budget for, which really puts athletic department's in a predicament because, you really weren't budgeting to purchase $20,000 worth of football jerseys again because you gave away 5 as gifts. So that really hamstrings athletic departments when that type of thing, when that happens. But again, with the brands that we have, you'll always be able to get it no matter what. And I encourage all the ADs listening to the podcast, to the recording. Please go visit garbathletics.com. That's GARB athletics.com. Type in your school name. The website is phenomenal. It's automatically going to populate your school colors with your school mascot. And once you look at all the different sports that they offer, there's hundreds and hundreds of designs that you guys can choose from and customize them however you want. And again, going back to what I said earlier, that's why we wanted to align ourselves with brands like this, like Garb, because we firmly believe that these brands benefit the high schools much more than the larger, bigger brands.
Well, I'm glad you did that. You gave out the website for Garb, but if somebody wants to reach out and find out more about DistrictWon or email you and pick your brain, what's the contact information? How do they get a hold of you?
Yes. So go to districtwon.com, districtwon.com. That is our website. Our contact information is on there. My email address is first initial D, last name CHALHOUB as in boy at districtwon.com. Email me. My contact information is on our site. Feel free to call me. I don't know if you want me to give out my phone number. I'll be happy to.
You want to give it out? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's 216-485-3558. That is my direct line. So for all the ADs that are out there that are inquiring about possibly new uniforms, even uniforms for the winter season that you can still order right now because of the turnaround times that we have with these brands, you still have the ability to order, still get them before your season starts. Or maybe, game 1 or game 2, we can still accommodate all of those orders for you guys. Again, I oversee all of the apparel sales here at DistrictWon. So you're only going to get me as a rep. I know that some of the, larger companies that are out there, you may start with one rep, then they bounce you to another rep, then they bounce you to another rep. So you may have 3 different reps that you don't know about or that are contacting you from the same company. But when you contact District 1, you're only going to get me. And we like it that way. We're a small company. We're very small. We're a small company, but big enough to accommodate anything that comes our way and any orders that come our way. But we all work together. Like I said, we've all grown up with each other since we were kids. So it's great.
Well, again, we'll give out that contact information again at the end of the podcast. But for our listeners, our guest is Tony. Okay.
Hey, I get that. I get that a lot. I wish I was related to Tony Chaloub because if I was related to him, I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing right now. Hopefully I'd be out there in Hollywood with him, but I'll take that as a compliment.
Oh my goodness. We're going to take a break, but we'll be back with some more. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to Gipper for their support of the podcast. Go to Gipper.com and see how athletic directors are creating world-class marketing content for their school social media channels. You can do it in seconds on any device. Go to Gipper.com and tell them you heard about it on the podcast and use the podcast code ADPOD10. That's ADPOD10 and get 10% off. Gipper.com. Create custom branded content for your school's social media channel. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. Go to Huddle.com. Huddle is how the world sees sports. Join over 200,000 teams who use Huddle to help their athletes play better. At Huddle.com, you're going to see all the tools that they can provide your school. As a high school coach, I used Huddle for years, but as an athletic director, We were a huddle school, and our coaches just loved the smart cameras, the mobile apps. Of course, they love the analytics, but there's so much more. Huddle's built for every level of play, from club and youth teams all the way through high school and college programs. Go to huddle.com and you're going to find a complete professional grade solution for your athletic department's needs. At Huddle, we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Go to huddle.com and join the 6 million users and turn your school into a Huddle school. Welcome back to the Educational AD Podcast. Danny, one of our longstanding questions revolves around this idea of toughness. 100 years ago, when I was in high school, our coaches would say things like, come on, you got to suck it up, or come on, Jake, you got to be tough. And we kind of knew what they meant, and we did it. In the many years since then, we've developed much better ways to communicate with our kids. But I still think that toughness is an important aspect of sports and of life. So here's my question. You've been around sports for a long time. How can we help kids develop toughness while also being aware of the very real challenges that a Generation Z kid is experiencing that I never had to go through? What's your thought on that?
Well, it's a really great question. I think when people think toughness, I think the first thing that they think of is that you have to be physically tough. It's all about physicality for toughness, which, plays, physicality does play a role in being tough on any athletic field, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, field hockey. You still have to have that physical toughness. But what I think a lot of coaches may overlook possibly is the mental toughness of the game. I think you need to be more mentally tough than physically tough. And what I mean by that is that I think sometimes, and I see it more so in the youth level, and I witnessed it just last week, is that, a lot of these kids that are playing for championships or playing to get into championships, this and that, they make one bad throw or one bad catch or miss that catch or miss this or miss that, and they just mentally just break down and just, they feel like their whole season is down the drain from that one play. And I think, coaching for at the youth level for a long time, it's how do you handle that, adversity? How do you handle, working with that young man or young woman to really overcome that. And it's really all about, I think to developing the mental toughness is just a positive reinforcement. It's not the one play that's really gonna, cost us the game or the season or whatever it is. It's really working with that student athlete and really developing, positive attributes and positive quotes or positive, words to really, overcome and just be more mentally tough when you are faced with that adversity, and see how they rise up to the occasion. So that's, to me, it's something, I think that's something that we really need to focus on more, instead of not just being physically tough, but being more mentally tough and working with those kids and developing, mental toughness and putting them in adverse situations and see how they can overcome it. Just my own life, just growing up again in a single parent household, I could have gone in a bunch of different directions. But I had that support system there to really, when I was in bad situations, to help me just get that mental strength and to really overcome those adverse situations.
Yeah, I think you touched on a couple of key points is, building that relationship with the student athletes, defining, what we mean by toughness, mental versus physical, rather than just, like my coaches used to do, hey, come on, you got to be tough.
Right. Yeah. Same with my coaches,
Very good stuff. Okay. We're going to take one more quick break, but then we'll be back. Our guest today is Danny Chaloub. He's the director of partnerships with a company called DistrictWon. We'll give out that contact information before we go, but please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to Final Forms for their support of the podcast. Final Forms is the industry leader in forms and registration, but they're a lot more than that. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with things like mobile accessibility, and they've got reminders for parents about policies, about physicals, and all the forms that come with athletics. Final Forms can also help your coaches with things like attendance and communication. And for athletic directors, Final Forms can help you with eligibility, with rosters, all the reports that come across your desk. You know, it's time that you talk to a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake to get started with Final Forms. Welcome back, everyone. Again, our guest today is Danny Chaloub. He's with DistrictWon. That's WON. Very cool company. We'll give out the contact information again before we go. Danny, another one of our longstanding topics has been this idea of social awareness. And I know that's a big umbrella, but how can an athletic director, a coach, a leader do a better job for their teams, for their community in social awareness? Do you have any advice for us?
You know, I think really the one thing that I think, and maybe we touched on a little bit, and I do think coaches and ADs do a good job of this. Obviously, it can always be better, but I think with all of the student athletes, those coaches and ADs really just develop the relationship. Don't just develop the relationship with just the star quarterback or the star offensive lineman or the star basketball player, whatever it is, because quote unquote those stars are bringing notoriety to the school because of their athletic abilities. I think that you need to develop relationships with every single kid on the team, whether you have 50 or 100, or if you have 25 or 10. I really think, once you develop the personal relationship, really, and it's not just a, hey, how are you? I mean, really get to know, that person and get to know that's like, the example from Remember the Titans, where, opposite races be together, find out something about each other. And it's not just, your name, this and that. It's really find out something about, who you are, what's your day-to-day life like. I think if coaches and ADs do a better job of developing those relationships and getting to know that student athlete, I think that's going to help them really, with their social awareness of all of their kids, and everybody, because everybody's contributing, whether you're a starter or not a starter, everybody's contributing to that program and to the success of that program. So I really think that that's really probably the biggest thing that, coaches and ADs can do is really develop an in-depth relationship with every student athlete that's on that team. Because like I said, everybody, whether you're a starter or coming off the bench or don't see really that much time at all, those kids are putting in the time, they're coming to the practices, so they are contributing to the success of the program. So that's really, I think, just develop the deeper relationship with every student athlete you have throughout all your programs.
Right. Yeah, you're so right. And it's goes back to that old cliche, and it's a cliche because it's true. The kids, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I'm going to guess I'm, a little bit older than you, but I'm going to guess it might've been similar back in our day. We had great coaches and we loved them, but I think by design, they tried not to, develop, as much of a personal relationship. And today's kids, it's just different. So
Right.
again, having that relationship with your kids, it's good for them. And oh, by the way, it also helps the team out too. So
Exactly.
thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, Danny, this has been really cool getting to know you a little bit and finding out more
Yeah.
about District 1, but we're not done yet.
All
We
right.
always like to wrap up with the athletic director's toolbox. So we're going to take our last break, hear from Athletic Surveys, who sponsor the toolbox segment. And when we come back, we're going to find out what Danny Chaloub is going to put in his athletic director toolbox. Please stay with us. We want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment of our podcast. Athletic surveys are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. At my schools, we use surveys for just about everything, for coaches, for teachers, for kids, and for parents. And the information that came back was almost always over the top positive, and it'll be the same for you. But surveys also allow that squeaky wheel parent to vent a little bit. And sometimes they'll share a small issue that you can address and keep it from turning into a big issue because you didn't know about it because you hadn't done a survey. Go to athleticsurveys.com or email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the folks at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. We've been visiting with Danny Chaloub. He is with DistrictWon, really cool company, and he'll give you the contact information for that in just a minute. But right now, we're going to ask him to send out a brand new athletic director on the very first job, but I'm only going to let him put 3 things in their toolbox. Danny, what 3 items are going to go in your athletic director toolbox?
3 items. Number 1, we touched on it, organization. Find and number 1A or 2 would be find that perfect administrative assistant to help you stay organized. Number 2, I would say listen. Listen to your parents, whether they're right or wrong. Absorb it all. Listen to your student athletes as well, whether they're right or wrong. Absorb all of that because something good will come out of it at the end. And then number 3 really is, to be honest with you, have fun. Working with kids and working in the athletic director role, I know it's 99.9% stressful a lot of the, almost every day, but have fun with it. Just have a great attitude going into it and have fun, just walking into work. And I mean, what can be more fun than going to high school football games and high school basketball games every Friday and Saturday night? So that's really it. And really quickly, the 4th toolbox for District 1, if I call you, please call me back. Chances are I'm calling you for a reason to help out your athletic department. I think that's very important with all athletic, and I know people get busy, and I know we're short on time here, and I'll wrap it up. But please, if you do get a voicemail from me or an email, please respond or give me a call back.
I love all the tools. People who listen to this know that listening is one of those tools I always mention that I started to use way too late in my career. But again, have fun. We have great jobs. We got the best job in the world.
Yeah.
Danny, one more time, if one of our listeners wants to find out more about DistrictWon, what's the website and how do they get in touch with you?
Sure. DistrictWon.com. That's DISTRICTWON.com. Visit our website. All the contact information is on there. If you want to get in touch with me directly, you can email me. First initial D, last name is CHALHOU, B as in boy, at district1.com. That's DISTRICTWON.com. Telephone number, direct line is 216-485-3558. Now with technology, you leave me a voicemail, it comes to my cell phone, goes to my email, so I'll never miss a call or miss a voicemail. You'll get a call back from me. And Jake, I can't thank you enough for having me on. This has been great. It's been awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. We appreciate you sharing. And All the best moving forward with District One. Are you guys going to be at the NADC conference in Nashville?
Yes, we will be down there in December.
Yep.
We got another show here in Ohio. The OI AAA show is coming up here in a couple of weeks, so we'll be down there as well. So for all of the Ohio listeners, please stop by the booth and see us. We'll be down there also.
Okay. Well, I'll be at Nationals. I'm sure a lot of our listeners will. Danny Chaloub, thanks so much for sharing. For
Thank
our
you.
listeners, remember the Zoom recordings of these interviews all get uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening today. Come back just about every day for new content on the Educational AD Podcast. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.